What is the meaning of life? How can you finally find love this year? And how can you stop that annoying habit that you can't seem to be able to stop? These are all good questions, but these aren't questions that we're gonna be covering in this episode. But you can write them all down in your favorite note-taking tool, which is Tana, and that is what and that is what we're gonna be talking about today. Tana, the note-taking tool that we all love. If you want to form part of future conversations like the one that I'm gonna have with Nick here for Tana Central, you can actually join and you can ask us questions live. You can find more information on that by joining our free community below. And there, of course, you're gonna find tons of awesome resources to make the most of Tana. So with that said, let's jump into the episode and I hope you enjoyed. Alright, welcome to episode 2 or off. I can't speak. Hey there, welcome to episode 2 or... Hey there, and welcome to episode 2 of our live podcast where we're gonna be talking about Tana and all the news. I made that intro like 3 times. How are you, Nick?
I'm great. That was fantastic to watch.
Yeah, very painful. I said the same thing 3 times and just made a mistake. But anyway, it's good to be
Groundhog Day for intros.
For sure. So, yeah, we're here in Twitter Spaces. And we're gonna be answering people's questions. If you are here listening to this, like as you can see here on my phone, we have like people that have joined, and we're gonna be answering questions if there's any live. If not, we're just gonna discuss the latest things that have been going on in the world of Tana and just discussing Tana as always. So yeah, let's get started. I think like any particular topics that have been interesting to you this week for Tana.
Well, I was just going over the release notes from last week, and I picked out 3 things that I thought were particularly interesting. So the first one is how you can drag and drop to reorder tabs. And I put that in the bucket of things that I call things my hand wants to do already, and now Tana lets me do.
Nice.
Because the tabs, they work very well, but they work so well that I want to hover the mouse over them and move them, and I wasn't able to until this update. And so that's great quality of life improvement.
Right. And because, I mean, for the most part, this is going to be a very audio-based show for people on Twitter so that it all makes sense. So, so describe that a little bit more, like tabs, under which context, and, what's essentially the use for that.
Yeah, so you can, there's a handful of different views that you can apply to your data in Tana. By default, everything is in what they call list view, which is really, it's bulleted form. But you can switch that to table view. There's the tab view. There's the latest, which they came out like a month ago, I think. It was the sidebar view. And you can also view as cards or as a calendar, which and all of those have unique ways that they can be powerful for both use and for the experience of using whatever you're working with. So obviously cards you're probably going to use for things a very Trello-like or Jira-like experience for task management or tracking status of things in a system. I really like to use the tabs as kind of the highest layer of an organization for visually showing things, either the tabs or the sidebar, and kind of alternating between those for once or twice. And then, tables is really just when you want to see like columns and rows. And I feel like I left something. Oh, the calendar, obviously anything that you're tracking over time, it's really useful for that.
Right, exactly. And I mean, for anyone that might be completely brand new to Tana, the advantage of doing this and the place where you do this is for super tags, right? So super tags is a nice way in which you can have something categorized in a certain way, and then everything that has that particular tag can be seen in what Nick is describing, which is essentially a database that can be seen as a list, as a calendar, and as cards, different ways to visualize data, right? So yeah, I mean, that by far, I believe, is the biggest feature of Tana. What do you think?
Yeah, well, actually, I wanna add a little thing, a little nugget is, I think the default controls for changing views really, for the most part, only shows for things like things that are tagged with a super tag. But I think all, or at least mostly, almost any time you can bring up those controls for any bullet and its children. So Like anything, super tags give you the superpowers for
Right.
that aspect, that feature of Tana, but it's not exclusively for super tags.
Yep. No, that's a good
But
point.
yeah,
Yep. Because what Nick is describing is like you can also have like a bullet point essentially, and then a bunch of sub bullet points underneath that, and you can right click, view it as a. Let me see what the actual name of it is, but yeah, you're right. Like you can transform things into like these special views. So I believe it's called. So when you right click
ah,
on a bullet point, it's called show view toolbar, and that allows you to kind of visualize the information in different ways. So yeah, you're right. It's not exclusive to super tags. Maybe that's kind of the most common way to use it, but no, what Nick said is a really good point. Like you can definitely visualize children nodes, which is like sub bullet points in all these sorts of ways. So maybe you just want to take notes, but you say like maybe the least view of just having bullet point after bullet point is not what I need. I might want to see this in a card view, a table, maybe a calendar. So yeah, no, that's a good point. I really like that. Do you make use of that a lot? Because to be honest, I usually tend to just do that for super tags instead of doing things as we're describing now.
if it's something that I feel like I need that kind of view, then it's usually something that I've already super tagged or plan on applying or creating a super tag around. Uh, that's actually kind of a signal to me
Right.
that if I am making a bunch of views like that, that maybe I should be making it. There's a super tag floating around here that I haven't actually created yet that I should.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. But I like that a lot because Tana kind of gives you that flexibility, right? And it's really nice because you can decide to use the super text. But it's a nice feature because if you think about, for instance, even Notion or something like that, like there's a certain structure that you need to follow in order to really make use of a given feature. But Tana kind of says like, oh, okay, there might be a use case where you don't want to create a full super tag for a particular use case, but you just want to see things as cards, like you described, like Trello, right? So that's a nice feature. Actually, you gave me a bunch of ideas because I almost exclusively use those different views for a particular super tag. So yeah, I would love to know out of those views, which is the one that you probably default most to.
It really depends. I mean, honestly, I default to the Tana default most, which is just the list, the bullet points.
Right.
Otherwise, it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm trying to just sort out a bunch of information and it is kind of organized data, I'll be putting things into a table view.
Yep.
But that's usually more for exploratory stuff, or if I have a bunch of things, like I do this in one view for task management system that I'm working on. There's this one particular state where I'm looking for what has been added and what has not been added to a certain stage in the process. And that's just one of these columns. And I just want to have a glance for everything, all of the tasks. And if I used any of those other views, it would be too much. That, like the cards, no. Calendar doesn't make sense. The list view is going to take up too much space vertically. And so the table view is perfect for that. But yeah, cards for anything that I want to like track over time, of course. So, but overall, yeah, bullet points and okay, tabs and the sidebar are my favorite actually. As like a go-to organizational visual principle.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, the sidebar is one that I recently started using a bit more, and it's a new experience almost. Can you think of any other app that does it that way with the sidebar style?
Well, I guess in a way, Notion does like in how it is built, the Notion product,
Right.
not necessarily what you would be building yourself. But as far like what I really like about Notion, or I mean Tana, there's several things, but one of them is how I am really kind of able to build my own interface using without having to code anything, of course, and without having to bust out Figma or anything. I can just select from a few options and say, I want this to feel more like kind of a website feel. I want this to be more like a Trello experience. I
Right.
want this to be like an Excel spreadsheet. So, yeah, that's one of the superpowers of Tana.
For sure, for sure. Nick, I'm going to transition into one of the questions that we have. By I'm so sorry, man. I can't. I don't know if I should pronounce Lasse or Las. Do you have any clue on how we pronounce his name, Brad?
I don't know. Lasse,
Yeah.
can we have him tell us?
Oh yeah, man. If you want to request to speak, that'd be even nicer. If you want to ask your question live here, otherwise I can just read it out and answer it. But yeah, I'll give you a few minutes, a few seconds, minutes. I don't know, in case you do want to join and speak. If you can't, don't worry. We'll cover your question here. We'll wait a bit for that. Yeah. In the meantime, like you were saying, like maybe Notion does have like this view of like the side peek, which does kind of allow you to see a table of things and then kind of see that on the side, right? But the fact that Tana not only allows that, but on top of that, it's a much more dynamic way of managing information. Like one of the biggest limitations of Notion really has really been the fact that you need to know exactly where you're gonna place something before you place it there. So you need to go to the specific database of what you want to fill in order to develop that workflow and keep putting new entries. Versus Tana, you can just do that anywhere and you just tag it accordingly and it's automatically sent to the correct database, right? So that's really nice about Tana.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You're able to learn what needs to be done as you're doing things. So that happens to me a lot. I'm just writing down things where I have an idea of a concept that I want to flesh out. And so
Right.
I'm just typing, okay, next line, okay, indent, next line, indent, down, down, down. And I realize I'm typing the same thing over and over again. This is a field or it's a super tag.
Right.
And it's being applied in the same way. And I notice that each time I have a natural inclination that I want it to become a card or whatever, you know? And so I realize, okay, I have a super tag with 3 fields and I want this as a card view. Just because I was typing it out over time and I realized that I'm repeating certain things and it's unnatural for me to just type it over and over again.
Right. Yep, for sure. Well, I have a couple of questions in that, but first let's answer. Yeah. Okay, so Lasse said he's driving, but no worries. So we're gonna just answer his question. He typed it out. Feel free to follow up in here. But yeah, so the question is this: if your use case is task management and meeting notes and nothing more, is Tana too much? Or would you recommend something like Workflowy or Todoist and Apple Notes or something else? So, okay, let's rephrase that or like let's just kind of like reemphasize the main point is like, is Tana good enough or is Tana a good idea if all you want to do with it is just task management and meeting notes? What do you think, Nick?
I had a professor who liked to say the right answer is always it depends.
Yeah.
And so it depends, but I would say that there's levels here. So first of all, no matter what you do in your personal or professional life, like you're doing more than task management and meeting notes.
Right.
You have some kind of CRM. You have some kind of personal knowledge management beyond meeting notes. You're doing a lot of reading and research and stuff. And so, from that perspective, even if you're only looking for task management and meeting notes, I have a feeling that you would benefit from a tool that is able to also handle those other things and bring those things and connect those things with your task management and meeting notes. That's one level right there. I'll let you take the next stab and tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, for sure. And I was just checking, like, Lasse was talking in our community about specifically the fact that he loves Workflowy, and for him, it covers most of the needs that he has, right? So, yeah, that's kind of like the extra context of like he's pretty happy with Workflowy, but he's been very tempted to try Tana more extensively to see if it fits within his larger workflow. Obviously, the question is very specifically about like Tana's capabilities for task management and meetings. And like you say, obviously, like you have a lot of benefits from having like a system that is able to expand if needed. Maybe right now all you need is to do like this particular thing, but in the future, not needing to switch to a completely different tool if you do realize you do need some extension of your workflow, right? If you need to do things further. So yeah, to kind of answer that question specifically about Tana's capabilities for task management and meetings, I'm going to start with meetings because I think for meeting notes, it's excellent. I really think there's very few apps that I can think of right now that can do as good of a job as Tana can. Because like we were talking about, like we can just drop any notes that we have into our daily note and we can organize it later. We can really tag it meeting notes and then we can have a database essentially automatically made for us for all of the different notes that we had with other people. Maybe it's, maybe we tag it in a way that there's a field where we select who was the meeting with. We can automatically populate like the date and stuff like that. But it's really nice because, in my opinion, it would be one of the most efficient ways, not only powerful, but very efficient way to keep track of notes for meetings. So let's break down meetings and then we'll get more into the task management. But what do you think about meeting notes specifically?
I think I like how you're breaking that down. And yeah, we're focusing on notes right now. And I would say that between the two, task management and notes, I think that just bare bones Tana, like when you're just getting in, it's much more conducive to note taking than it is task management.
Right.
And so uh, I'm going further in than I expected, but I'll say that I think that if you're just trying to compare Tana to your favorite task management app and Tana to your favorite note taking app, Tana might at least be on par with your favorite note taking app. I doubt Tana is going to be able to compete with your favorite task management app out of the box without experience and without contouring it to how you like to work and everything.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Like if I had to classify Tana as like what type of product it is, what type of app it is, I would be a lot more inclined towards saying like, oh, it's the best note-taking app there is, right? So yeah, that's a really good point because if you want to compare it to some of my personal favorites for task management, and I have a video on this on my channel, the top three if I have to just kind of keep top three, would be Asana, especially if it's for collaboration. Then, well, I classify Todoist and TickTick as like the same app because they're the same, but they have different benefits. So yeah, like Todoist / TickTick, and there's another one that I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's called Amazing Marvin. Have you ever heard of that one? It's not that popular.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I think I never got past checking out their marketing webpage. I never actually tried it.
Yeah, so the reason why I think like those are the three top recommendations that I would have for most people is because if you want collaboration, then Asana is incredible, right? But then if you do want something that is completely personal, I personally prefer TickTick a bit over Todoist. I think the features are a little bit better. But then Amazing Marvin is very nice and complete personal system that, in my opinion, is even more powerful than Todoist. But anyway, not to get on too much of a tangent, these tools are amazing, and then there's other tools that you can use on top of this to kind of like, if you work with a team on one place in Asana, but you have your personal ones in TickTick, for those cases, I actually love using one called Akiflow. I don't know if you heard of this one. It's really, really nice. Yeah.
I do not know.
Yeah, that's good.
Akiflow.
Yeah, Akiflow is a really nice one because it's kind of a centralized task manager where you can import from other places. So it just kind of makes everything just, be centralized in one place. And I really like the features that it has. But just going back to the Tana thing, as you can see, like there's a lot of different options that you can have for your different needs when it comes to keeping track of your to-dos, right? Of your tasks. And Tana is not meant to compete with those tools. It's not meant to really replace them, in my opinion. So the real power of Tana as a task manager is based on the fact that you already use it as your main note-taking app. That's where you keep track of your meeting notes, maybe a CRM, and just a bunch of things that you already do in Tana. Then you might as well just kind of use some of his potential it has for task management on top of all of the other use cases. So if someone just comes to me and says like, okay, I need to find a task manager, but I don't use Tana and I don't want to use Tana, but I'm looking for a task manager, I would probably say, okay, there's a lot of options dedicated just for tasks. If you're already using Tana for all of your nodes, then I think there's a really powerful system that you can develop within Tana for managing tasks. But that's the whole point. If it's just for tasks, then I would say maybe Tana is not designed for that, but it can be adapted for your needs. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very good points. And I'd like to add to that. So starting with what I already said, that, note taking, it's more more powerful and better suited toward note taking than task management
Yep.
out of the box.
Yep.
However, I would also say that the best task management is not just like listing some tasks. You can superpower task management by connecting it to everything else that you're doing, your notes and everything
Right.
else. And so if you're able to directly reference notes in the same product or something, or if you're just reviewing notes and you realize, oh, I need to make a task based off of this, and you can just do a quick keyboard shortcut or just type in a super tag and it adds it to a particular place and location and system that you already have set up with just that little keyboard shortcut, then you have just advanced from just kind of task management to now an entire workflow and habit generator.
For sure, that's one of the best points and the best pros for actually keeping track inside of Tana, because and I actually made this video ready on my YouTube channel, just comparing the different kind of like pros and cons of each app. And one of the biggest problems there is with any of the task managers that I talked about is that almost none of them integrate in any way with your notes, right? You would have to like either use something like Zapier to kind of like use the API to integrate things and just kind of automate things and send data and bring data, but it's a mess. I've tried that, and in my opinion, that doesn't work with almost any app, right? So if your priority is kind of keeping things centralized and in one place that is very cohesive and is easy to structure and improve over time, it does make a lot of sense to use Tana specifically as a place where you integrate your notes and your tasks. In that video that I made, I called that Unity, right? And like how much of centralized system you can have versus how much you need to split your notes go in this app, your tasks go in this other. So if you see a lot of advantage to having your notes and your tasks in one place because of the way that it work, you're writing some notes and you say, this is a task, then Tana is incredible for that because it makes that whole process super easy, right?
Great question.
Yeah, that was a good one because a lot of people, I'm sure, kind of like want to know, okay, I have these tools already in my arsenal of tools. Which one is going to be, like, how does Tana fit within all of that? And as much as in the past I've always been, and I still think of this, but the right tool for the right job. So what is the best tool that I can find for this particular need that I have? At the end of the day, Tana, one of the needs that it really covers is the fact that if you do want that unity, if you want to have things under one same roof to keep things simple, in my opinion, it's probably the best app for that, because even Notion, I don't think it has. Notion has really competed to be like your everything in one tool, right? And yeah, actually, how do you perceive that? I'd be curious to know, like, how do you think Tana stacks in that sense of like it's an all-in-one tool? What do you think?
This dovetails really well with a conversation I had a few days ago, and so I was just recounting how I discovered Tana and started using it. And at about the same time that I discovered Tana, I watched a talk between Francesco, I forget his last name.
D'Alessio.
Keep Productive, I think.
Yeah, keep productive. That's
Oh,
right.
okay. Yep. So there's a talk between him and Tiago Forte,
Yep.
and they were talking about the future of productivity apps
yep.
and personal knowledge management.
Yep.
And one of the questions was like, what direction are things going to go in? Or is it going to be more and more unity, as you called it, or is it going to be more and more focused on like really kind of micro niches or really particular use cases? And if I recall, both of them thought, I think we've seen a Notion about as far as you can go. We can't get any more unity. And so what you're going to see is a lot more fracture in the market of focusing on not only task management, but perhaps particular types of task management, a particular, app for note taking and all these things. And I really liked, I understood and agreed with everything that was said in that talk. And so when I tried Tana, I went into it thinking, okay, they're trying to be everything for everyone.
Right.
This isn't going to work. I'm going to try it out, but really, this is going to last a week, maybe. And here I am, like 14 months later, being a Tana fanboy, because And it goes back to the philosophy of how they're building it and everything. It makes it possible to do all of these things and have that flexibility, and really minimize the cost you have in the experience of building those things and using those different aspects of it. So that's where I'm at. I absolutely love it. I went from like, this is gonna fail because they're trying to do too much, to I love it because they're trying to do everything and succeeding.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's a really good point because when I before that I was heavy user of Obsidian and I've always been into task management apps. Like I've tried a lot of them, like over 10 for extended periods of time. And I've always been of that idea of like, okay, this is the best tool for note taking, which at the time I thought it was Obsidian, and then this is the best one for tasks, some of the ones that I mentioned before. And then obviously Notion was popular during that whole period of time, but I never really liked Notion as an all-in-one tool. I actually think it does everything mediocre. Like it's a mediocre product for most things, but it does one thing really well, which in my opinion was databases and these tables where you can add filters and select different tags for things or multi-selectors, multiple choices, things like that, right? So I use kind of Notion as a very specific product for a particular need, and up to that point, I was always like more inclined towards dividing my workflow in different apps. I never was able to really automate integrations. Those things have never really worked that well for me, in my opinion. But then when Tana came around, I I still have a bit of that conflict of like, should you use specialized tools, like you say, and that conversation between Tiago and Francesco is very interesting because the economy of like productivity tools is probably heading that way, but there's gonna be still some room for some people that just want to keep everything in one tool. And at the end of the day, Tana for me is like the only app that has proven, at least for what I need, to be a really nice place to essentially keep everything in there. For me, the only exception is task management. I have developed like advanced systems for task management inside of Atana, but I do prefer a dedicated app for that. But everything else, meeting notes, perhaps a CRM. I still have a bit of conflicts with a CRM, stuff like that. But meeting notes and a Zettelkasten system, keeping track of all of my best thoughts and writings and so on. I think Tana really has a potential for that. If Tana can add a couple of extra features moving forward, such as the ability to write long form text in there and a better mobile app in the future, I think in my opinion, it's already better than Notion as an all-in-one tool. And I think if it really has those things that it's developing, then it can really take over as the best all-in-one. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think they made a smart choice in like their marketing, from what I've seen, has always been simultaneously the everything OS, like everything, okay, but also it seemed like there was definitely a focus, especially early on note taking,
Right.
and personal knowledge management. And I think that was a very smart strategy, because once you nail note taking and knowledge management, which is thinking, so they have the tendrils in everything else. Once you nail the thinking part, you can get the action part down. And so yeah, task management, it's not there yet. I agree. And like, I've developed a couple systems on my own that I haven't shared out because I don't see any. It's not uniquely flexible and powerful enough, and I'm not confident that even if it kind of solves my problems, I haven't tested it on like, other people, so I'm not confident that it solves anyone else's problems. And so I'm hopeful that there's some more developments that help with the task management uh, experience there.
Yeah, I agree. Like, as part of the stuff that I've done in Tana and just like courses and stuff like that, I did develop, same as you, kind of like I developed what is the ideal system of using all of Tana's features. How can I make the best as manager tool inside of Tana itself? And I turned that into a template, and I still think that's super helpful. And I did use that for several months. But one of the biggest limitations that I really think will be solved once there is a mobile app is the ability to on the go capture tasks and go that automatically
Mm.
be automatically tagged as a task. as a super tag for, your to-dos and stuff like that. So in my opinion, that has been the biggest limitation, really. So once that is solved, I think it's going to get a lot better. Just the ability to, on the phone, on the go, being able to capture your tasks easily. Yep.
Cool. I wanted to, so
Yep.
maybe it's not obvious, but that reminds me of something else that I wanted to talk about in the release notes from last week.
Yep.
So the second thing that jumped out at me was there is now a new system command node to open a link.
Oh, really?
Which I think is huge. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So you can.
Yeah. Describe it.
Yep. You can set commands to open links now, which, when you pair it with AI, opens the possibilities for having agents working inside Tana. Are you familiar with the agent paradigm?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. But if you can describe it quickly for people that might not be familiar, that'd be super cool.
Yeah. So this became huge like 10 months ago in the AI sphere,
Yep.
where instead of just talking to ChatGPT or something, you could actually talk to an AI, which would then delegate tasks to agents who would do certain things. So let's say what you want is help me find the best pizza place in Brooklyn. And so, the top bot would delegate responsibilities to searching Google and finding directions and reading reviews and everything, and then come back and say, hey, you can go to this restaurant or that restaurant. These have the best reviews in that vicinity. And then, down the line, we can have, if you give people or the agents access to certain capabilities, they could even book tables at restaurants and order food and everything. So that's the idea with AI agents. And this command node to open links just reminds me of that possibility. If you give the AI capabilities inside Tana to open links, to set tags and stuff in given context, then that opens up the possibility for so many, I don't even know, actually. And I don't know. Yeah, I'm just going to stop there.
Yeah, no, don't worry. That's really cool. So I haven't explored this new command that Tana has. So if I hear you right, is this a way to open like external links or links inside of Tana? Like, what is it? Both? What is it like?
I also haven't played with it yet, but I assume it would open any link, including if you right click on a node and say get the link for that node, including that.
Ah, gotcha.
And I assume also external links like to, regular web pages and stuff, but anything that is linkable.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool because like you were describing the whole thing about agents. Tana really already has like some nice AI that can be played with. Like there's, if you type AI and then do colon, and then you start typing something, you do have like this button that enables you to essentially use it as ChatGPT, right? Like that's a feature that can already be enabled. But then I'm really curious how the potential of note taking can be mixed with this idea of agents. Actually, agents is something that I remember when like you said, like 10 months ago or so, when it started kind of it became a thing. I didn't play with it and I explored it, but I'd love to know. Well, first off, I'd like to ask, like, is there something in your workflow in your life that you already use agents for, or something that you've only played with?
No, well, I played with some of the things that people created
Yeah.
In April of last year, and it was all like none of it was useful, unfortunately. It liked to get stuck in loops.
Right.
It would find local maxima, and it couldn't actually do anything, but it would report back as if it was. Often there were so many things like that, like. The brain and the body were separated,
Yeah.
and the brain thought the body was doing things, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very useful, but there's a few people that I follow, like on Twitter, for instance. There's this guy called Max Wrigley. He does all sorts of little projects every now and again, and I can see what is possible,
Right.
and it's just going to be amazing. And
Yeah.
if you bring in those possibilities, whether it's computer vision, or just hooking into like Zapier or something,
Yep.
and being able to hook that into your data with Tana, for instance. Yeah, and forget the external world, but just having something
Right.
like an agent in Tana that can open links to certain nodes and stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Just automating things that usually you would have to do manually, right? That would be the main purpose, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's really cool. Like you say, like talking about agents and stuff like that is interesting because I don't know if you've seen like sometimes I find a YouTube video talking about a topic and then they bring up ChatGPT, but it was when ChatGPT just was starting as a thing, you know. And
Mm.
now we look back and it's like, oh yeah, of course ChatGPT, but it's I think it's the same thing for agents. Right now we're talking about agents, but you know, someone finds this video in 1 year and they're like, oh, those were very early stages for the agents thing. So I think that's really gonna explode, and I'm really curious to see how agents, ChatGPT, AI in general, how it really changes the way that we take notes. Because you know, like I mentioned in in the previous conversation that we had, like something like mem. I love that idea, right? A place that you can
Hmm.
like literally mem the product is an app where you take down all of your notes in there, and then you have essentially a ChatGPT interface, a chat that you ask for finding a particular note, or even say like, oh, out of all of these notes that I have, give me kind of a summary of those and stuff like that. So the potential of AI and note taking is something that I really think is gonna change the way everyone does things. You know, because there's gonna be the nerds like us that really want to modify workflows and improve things, but it can really change things for everyone.
Okay, so two things.
Yeah.
One, uh, my mind went to a place where imagine
Mm-hmm.
in the future where task management is no longer really mostly about managing your own tasks.
Right.
It's just keeping an eye on tasks that AIs are doing for you.
Wow. So agents, essentially, like you were describing,
Yeah,
a list of
yeah.
tasks
But
that they
like,
complete.
yeah, like I'm writing notes in Tana and I'm making tasks and they're sent to different agents.
Right.
And these agents break down those tasks into subtasks and they're doing those things. And then I have a dashboard that, you know, just shows the current status of all these things and recommendations for next steps. And I just click yes, yes, no. Like that's where my mind is going.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool because then that way you become kind of like the supervisor, the manager of all these things. You set the goals because you're the human who wants to achieve things in life. So you kind of set
Hmm.
the things that you want to get achieved, get done. But then it's really the robots that are completing things. Interesting. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And do you see this quite related to like your work, or do you think there could be some areas of like personal life, how the AI can also do things there?
Wow. It could be applied to anything, but I would offer a word of caution if you apply to any personal aspect of your life.
Right.
Either because of like it could start to feel impersonal. If you have an impersonal personal life, you no longer have a personal life,
Wow, that's true.
or data leak or something like that. Is your data really secure? Do they? Are you personal conversations going to start getting posted on Twitter or something like that?
Right.
I would keep those things separate and far apart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, like tell my girlfriend I love her every day at intervals between 8 and 9 a.m. so that it doesn't feel robotic. Things like that. Yeah,
Yep.
that can get dangerous very quick. Have you seen? I'm not a huge fan of South Park in general, but have you seen the South Park episode on ChatGPT?
No, I have not.
That one I recommend a lot. I'm not somebody who binges South Park, but that episode was genius. And it's literally that. It's how they use AI in order to automate their personal relationships, and everything just goes to hell because of it. Yeah.
That was thing one. Thing two, the release notes for this week
Yep.
were just released.
Oh, right now, as we're speaking?
Yeah.
Oh, let me take a
Yeah.
look as well. I'll find out which ones you like the most, and I'll also take a look, and we'll talk about those. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Yep.
I'm just going to start reading them and maybe interrupt me when you hear something interesting.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, so first one is title expressions can now be used in open link and build URLs.
Okay.
Title.
Okay.
Oh, meh. Okay. You can now remove a banner image or icon that comes from a tag directly from the instance, or set a banner image or icon as a default banner. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Eh.
Yeah. Let's kind of skim through them, see which one stands out instead of reading them all. I'll also take a look. I'll
Okay.
take a look at the final ones. You keep going in that order.
Okay. This is a nice quality of life improvement. Clicking the date field now opens the date picker automatically. That's one of those things
cool.
that, like, my hand and I assumed would happen,
Right.
and they added that. That's nice.
That's cool.
The copy animation is a tiny bit more subtle. Okay.
That's nice. I like that one. Oh, okay. Maybe that's okay. I think that's actually it. Like I was this morning copying things, and it kind of like brings down the opacity, and it kind of has a little animation when you copy a particular node in Tana. I think that's what they're referring to. Maybe I experienced that this morning by accident.
Must be it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
Auto initialize functions on fields will no longer initialize the fields if the function does not return a field to return a value.
That sounds like a prophecy. I'm not sure if I even understood that one. Auto initialize.
It's listed as a fix. So basically,
okay.
if I think that must be like a performance thing, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you make a lot of use of that particular feature, the auto initialize?
Auto initialize?
Yeah.
Yes, I try to be careful because I am afraid of like I apply it the wrong way, and now everything in my whole workspace has the wrong super tag or something. But I definitely use it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I get you.
I use it, and where I use it, I love it.
Do you have maybe an example? I mean, not to share, but like,
Yeah.
kind of to talk about, really.
Yeah, the one that is top of mind is when I'm taking notes, and it's underneath a node that is some form of media, whether it's a podcast or a TV show or something.
Yep.
If I take a note in there, then there's a field that auto initializes to whatever that piece of media was.
Okay. Yeah. I do remember. When I was doing tests on that, it's kind of like a category where, like, if you tag someone as an author, it automatically tags his respective book as book. Is that right?
And so, like, a perfect example would be, let's say I am taking notes, like I have a note tag.
Yep.
And so I take a note on a podcast that I was listening to, and I say, oh, here's interesting thing X, hashtag note. And then, one of the fields that's part of that note is context. And that context fills with any media, because I have like a super parent of media. And so podcast counts as a media, so it fills in with the title of the podcast.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah, and you can also set auto tag children. I've experimented that with notes. So like I have a notes node on a tag, and any child of that automatically becomes tagged as a note. And I'm not certain if I like it or hate it. I've experimented with it several times, and I'm still on the fence.
Yeah, okay, no, I do know what you mean. I think I was actually referring to a separate thing from what you were saying, but yeah, so it's kind of like ways to kind of automate things a little bit more so that you don't have to do them as manually, right? Like that's the whole point of those features.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so from these release notes, anything that stood out to you, anything that I think at the end of the day is like little improvements, like the calendar thing. Yeah, and then just like some at the very end, I see that it says that on daily notes pages, the Switch calendar has now been renamed to Switch Workspace. I did notice that.
Yeah, honestly, that is like, it sounds like a very small thing, but that might be my favorite update for this release.
It does make sense.
Because it was confusing.
Yep.
Yeah. I wasn't sure what was happening because of the previous way.
Right. No, it is a good change, because when people think about switching calendar, they literally think about a calendar instead of a daily page. And this makes a lot more sense. Yeah. I see that they did mention talking about just us creating Tana Central and just starting posting that. So that's cool stuff. Obviously, the shout out. They're very nice at just kind of highlighting everything that everyone's doing. So there's a lot of really cool things. What are you, like in terms of the current features, which is perhaps a feature that you've keeping an eye on, or a workflow that you would like to develop that you haven't had time yet?
Yeah, we kind of touched on this earlier, and that's like really the task management
Yeah.
of, and I don't know if I could point to what it is exactly that is holding me back, but there's something
Mm.
not quite there yet. Yeah, and so I don't know what that is,
Yep.
but I believe that they'll offer that, whatever it is. And then the other thing is more on me, I think,
Yep.
of developing more for personal knowledge management
Mm.
and systematizing innovation as much as possible. Like there's
Nice.
always going to be like magic spark stuff, but like maximizing the surface area for those magic sparks.
Yep.
And so I want to work on that more.
Nice. That's cool. That's cool. And this is something that I probably want to talk to you about later because as part of our community, we're trying to develop better ways to help people implement new workflows and learn Tana better. There is this one thing that I've been working on for now a few years. That was a system that I developed inside of Obsidian. Then I kind of moved to Logseek. I've tested in different apps to see where it works, and there was always a couple of features that I had missing out of those workflows. And at the time, there was even Rome research, which to me is kind of like the what is that word? Predecessor? Is that the right word? Comes before?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
predecessor to
Yeah.
Tana, right? Like Tana, in my opinion, is just a much better Rome research. And there's this workflow that I've been always super excited about improving, but at the end of the day, in the previous apps, I've always kind of given it up a little because I say like, okay, maybe this could work for myself, but if I want to teach it, there are just too many roadblocks for people to find crazy workarounds. So now, actually, this morning I was very excited to revisit those workflows that I was creating there and bringing them to Tana and seeing the potential of it. It's something that I call owl, like the animal, OWL. I was trying
Hmm.
to you have no idea how many months it took me to come up with something that was catchy enough. But owl is pretty cool. It stands for OWL, which is outline with links. So that is kind of like
Huh.
the way that I was thinking of it. And what it really is a Zettelkasten implementation that works inside of an outliner. So that is why Obsidian wasn't really an outliner, but it had a lot of the features that I needed. Then Logseek, which is the one that I used to use
Hmm.
before, had a lot of the outliner functionality, but it had a couple of missing features. So now bringing all of that in Tana is something that I'm excited for. I think, in my opinion, is um, actually it's kind of adapted from a couple of creators, a couple of people that used to have some sort of system like that inside of Rome research. But Rome again had some limitations. So now bringing this to Tana and bringing my own input into it, something that I'm really excited to share. So I'll definitely show you later, and we might make a video on YouTube, share my screen and stuff like that. But that's something that I'm very excited for.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. And that really points to where Tana is the most mature right now, and that is the personal knowledge management,
Yeah.
where so much more is possible. Uh, but it still takes some thought and effort. And I wonder how how much they'll be able to push the envelope in the direction of minimizing thought and effort needed to implement systems like that, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I do know what you mean. And at the end of the day, like, I don't know if you are. Let me ask you first, like, are you very familiar with, like, the whole Zettelkasten stuff? Is that something that you've learned about, tried, stuff like that, or not much? If not, I'll give you more context, no worries.
I know that I've learned about it. Is that the same as what Tiago Forte teaches or different?
I would say it's different, but, like,
The second brain. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So either way, like I'll kind of break it down a little, as well as for anyone listening. The Zettelkasten has really been like this. This was started by I think he's a sociologist, Nicholas Luhmann, German, and the whole point of what he was doing was really how can he develop a system in which whenever he reads something, whenever he has something kind of as an input of knowledge, how can he capture that into his own note-taking system so that later he can output it into his own original work? So he would essentially read a lot of books, have a really advanced note-taking system, and then outputting that into books. He wrote like 70 books, right? Like the guy was crazy. And he kind of sparked this whole movement that is what really got me interested into note-taking tools a couple of years ago. And his whole idea was that obviously with that technology of the time, he realized that the best way to do it was doing it in index cards, right? So these were kind of like just small pieces of paper, and the whole Zettelkasten thing is in German, I believe it means sleep box. So it's kind of like a box of paper notes, right? So he would have all of these things stacked into a massive box that later expanded into shelves, expanded into like, like his whole house probably was full of shelves and full of boxes with a bunch of papers. But he would give them all an ID number, right? So it would be something like 1A, 1A1.1. Like he had like his whole nomenclature to kind of like organize things and just kind of keep it easy for him to keep track of branches. But the whole idea was that he was able to, if every card had an ID, it was easy to reference. Like in this particular note that I'm writing, see more information about this in card number 23A.2, something like that, right? And that was kind of like the hyperlink idea that he had, almost like what obviously is now super easy to do with technology, and Tana referencing and copying stuff is so much easier. So a lot of people through the years have been trying to find the best app for it, and I finally, like you said, I think finally Tana has been able to provide the right technology to implement advanced things like that. So how can we process what we learn, transform it into our own notes, our own way of phrasing it, and how it fits within all of our knowledge, and then outputting it into original content? So that's something that I used to be extremely excited about in the past, and now it's something that I really want to re-explore and just kind of dig deeper. And just to kind of wrap it up with the idea that you said of what Tiago Forte has done with the second brain, I really think he has done a bit of a modern adaptation of that. He hasn't been too loyal to the original method. He kind of made up his own method. So I think he maybe started as that influence, but then he took it in ways that just kind of very different. So yeah. But yeah, what do you think? Like any thoughts that come to mind?
I think that Zettelkasten was the best that you could think of given the technology at the
Right.
time for coming up with a magic formula for turning ideas and thoughts over time into productive capacity. But that requires setting things up. It requires having a whole system, either like physical filing cabinets or like, digital domains and areas and projects and everything, that you put things in certain places and you take them out and put them back and all these things. And I think Tana is a natural evolution from that, where
Right.
we can get the same results without having to think so much, without having to plan so much about where things go, that must have a particular order and everything. If you have a system set up in Tana, then you can just do the equivalent of writing things, a piece of paper, and it magically sticks to wherever makes the most sense. Write another note, and it's like Harry
Right.
Potter
Yep.
with just things flying everywhere where it makes sense, and they sort themselves out.
Yeah. No, for sure. I've sometimes have found myself in a bit of a, I don't know, like dilemma when it comes to like the ability that technology has to almost like stick itself in the right place,
Mm.
because I've like if it's all paper based, right, and everything goes in a box like the original Zettelkasten did, then everything is extremely intentional, and there's a lot of friction, which is the biggest negative, right? And there's a lot of like steps in the way, even if you want to essentially get a piece of paper and see the card that is referring to, you have to literally walk, look through things. It's just kind of like a necessary
Mm.
friction and making the process too slow. But what I do like about it is that it's very, very intentional. And then when it comes to like modern technology, as much as I agree that it's amazing to have things, I have noticed myself, whether it's in Tana or other tools like it, that relying so much, and I mean, I'm a big proponent of relying on technology, right? And now even with AI, even more so. But I'm trying to bring an element of more of that, what is it called? Maybe even order or
Hmm.
kind of like rigidity towards like knowing how can I find the right thing without always relying on like hoping that technology puts it in the right place or hoping that I will find it, versus
Mm.
being extremely intentional and placing it literally somewhere as a reference. Perhaps everything goes in the daily note, but then maybe I could reference it in the right context of where I want to see it next. So that has been a bit of the debate that I've been having literally these last couple of days. So yeah, what do you make of that? What do you think?
I think that there's a delicate dance to be
Yeah.
done there, because I think you're right. There sometimes the friction is the point. Sometimes that's you thinking, actually.
Right.
You having to walk from cabinet 1 to cabinet 2. While you're taking that walk, you're realizing, oh my God, I just passed by this thing. This is how it's like
Right.
if you have a system that has absolutely zero friction, you never get those things. And it's weird. You want to minimize friction to a point where there's just enough friction for weird random things to happen. But besides that, you want to absolutely minimize friction.
No, that's a really good point, man. Like serendipity, as they call it, right? So just kind of
Yeah.
enabling the ability to stumble upon things
Or
by accident.
just the time and the time to think about things
The time to
sometimes.
think.
Like if you don't, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's where, like, I think about the possibilities of not just right now in Tana, but in the future with AI and having truly magical, like, I don't even need to write anything down. It's just recording my conversations 24/7, and it's parsing everything and putting things all these different. And whenever I think of a question, oh, I ask it. Okay, here's the answer. But if there's zero friction anywhere, you might get to the point where you atrophy the part of you that is even able to ask questions, let alone
Wow.
find answers.
Wow, that's a really good point. Literally the other day I was just fantasizing of like, oh man, like I listen to this podcast. I don't want to like get my phone and transcribe what I heard. Or sometimes I'm just on the go. I might be on the gym. I don't really feel like sitting down and like like synthesizing it and making it easy for me to revisit later. So that's when I do fantasize about like, would it be nice if like my thoughts were recorded 24/7, like you say? But it's a good point that you bring, the fact
Hmm.
that that would probably take away your ability to think quite a bit. So yeah.
I I just thought of a wild prediction. So, like, can you imagine 200 years ago telling someone from that time period, hey, guess what? Like 90% of dudes are gonna go to a little building and lift weights.
Yeah.
What are they doing with those? Where are they putting them? Why are they? No, that's the whole point. I predict that there's going to be the mental
Yeah.
equivalent of gyms like
Wow.
that because it's going to be necessary.
Wow. That's crazy. So by mental equivalent, do you mean like people are gonna look back into our times and be like, oh, they actually had to stop for a second and type it out either in their phones or computers? Is that what you mean? That's crazy.
I have no idea what it's going to be,
Yeah.
but yeah, maybe it's going to be like instead of, or well, in addition to, okay, I'm going to the gym for the next hour.
Right.
There's also going to be, okay, I'm retyping the Iliad for the next hour, and like who knows what it would end up being,
Yeah.
but something like mental
Right.
exercise because otherwise you'll never use your brain.
That's crazy. Wow. Okay. Okay. So you mean like the way that our ancestors used to literally lift heavy stuff as a way of life, as a way of how they, yeah, how civilization worked, right? That was an obvious thing they had to do. You mean like, yeah, this is crazy. So you mean that in the future our brains will be so much atrophy is happening that we literally need to go to a place or do a certain activity to make sure that they're not going bad, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, that's my bold prediction.
Man, that makes sense. That makes sense. I saw it as well from the other side, which is like, what are the things that we do today that are the future, the people in the future will look back and be like, I can't believe they actually wrote down their notes instead of just
Mm.
thinking about them, or I can't believe they Google things. To be fair, like even with AI now, whenever I go to my to visit my family and stuff like that, like I have some family members who don't really understand ChatGPT or they'd never tried it, and I explain it to them, and I essentially explain how Google is going to be obsolete in a way, or Google is going to have to evolve
Hmm.
in a way that is quite drastic. Like, like even just the amount of Google that I use day to day has decreased massively as AI gets better. I use more of AI to research things and find things
Mm.
versus Google or Perplexity, which is a nice mixture of both. A nice place to search using AI, almost like what Bing Chat has tried to do. But yeah, these technologies are really changing the way that we behave, and who knows where we're gonna end up. So that's crazy.
Yeah. What a world we are going to live in.
Yeah.
Man, I'm just thinking back like 30 years ago, like,
Yeah.
and what 30 years from now is going to be like. Okay, Pandora's box has been opened. Like another 3 hours of talking.
For sure, man. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, let's start wrapping it up. Um I had a point, but I forgot. Either way, anything that you would like to say, because I forgot my point. It was great, but it's gone.
Huh. Yeah, I guess I'm looking forward to thinking as an exercise.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And okay, yeah, sorry, I didn't remember the thing that I was gonna say. Is like we do live in this kind of transition stage with technology where like it's not paper, but it's not thought
Mm,
computer, right? It's not a chip in our brains that kind of ready like we think the thing and it's written down, then we can retrieve it. Like we're not there yet, but we're beyond paper, right? So we live in this transition period
mm,
where like we can use technology like Tana specifically to automate some aspects, but it's a nice in between because there's still
mm,
room for intentional thinking and there's still room for original thoughts and original organization of ideas. So kind of making use of that I think is definitely beneficial for people who, like us, make a living, through our knowledge workers, right? Like people that literally want to synthesize information, make something new out of it, and come up with better ideas, better solutions to problems. So I think we live in a nice time in technology. So using the cutting edge, which we believe to be Tana, I think can definitely help you, like, push your work forward.
yeah. Uh, do we want to have anything else? I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I think that should be it for now.
Mm.
For anyone that did join the Twitter Spaces, thank you so much. If you're watching this later, that's really nice. And yeah, I think we should start wrapping it up. If anyone that's watching the YouTube video now wants to join our community, the link for that is in the description. There we're pretty active answering your Tana questions and giving you the best resources to learn Tana. So with that said, that has been episode 2 out of this podcast. And yeah, anything
Oh,
else?
one last thing.
For sure.
A reminder that we're doing these every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Yep, that's a good point. And you'll be able to find that if you join the community, you can see it in your own time zone so that you don't have to deal with the maths of time zone. But yeah, good point. We'll talk soon. And that has been the episode. Bye bye.